Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Hold no punches.
I'm real revolutionary right now. Black power.
Support this man, Black media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig? Folks, today is January 19th, 2026, coming up on Roland Martin Unfiltered, streaming live on the Black Star Network. It is the national holiday of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And as I always said, this day is not just about him. It's also about the entire Black freedom movement, civil rights movement, all of the people who made it possible for us to enjoy the rights that we have. And so we'll talk about that. We'll hear from a number of individuals who worked with Dr. King, walked with Dr. King, including Zenona Clayton, also Reverend Jesse Jackson Sr., Andrew Young, Juanita Abernathy. We'll hear from Reverend C.T. Vivian. Also, Congresswoman Eleanor Holmes Norton, the late Congressman John Lewis, Clarence Jones, who was Dr. King's attorney, Claiborne Carson, who runs the King Center in Stanford. All these folks, Dorothy Cotton, who was the only woman in the inner circle of Dr. King, all of these people we talked to over the last several years, sharing their thoughts and reflections on working with this 20th century giant. Also, folks, commemoration events took place today at the King Center in Atlanta. We'll show you some of that. We'll also show you what took place at the wreath-laying ceremony, where Maryland Senator Angela Also Brooks spoke at the MLK Memorial. A lot of people are sharing their thoughts. Bomani Jones had a great commentary today regarding the life of Dr. King. And so much we want to talk about. We're also going to hear from the first African-American Attorney General for the Commonwealth of Virginia, Jay Jones. He'll join us, as well as House Democratic Leader Hakeem Jeffries. Lots for us to talk about. It is time to bring the funk, King style, on Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network.
He's got it. Whatever the miss, he's on it. Whatever it is, he's got the scoop, the fact, the find. And when it breaks, he's right on time and it's rolling. Best believe he's knowing. Putting it down from sports to news to politics. With entertainment just for kicks, he's rolling. It's on go, y'all. It's Roland Martin, yeah.
Folks, today is King Day. It's a national holiday for the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Of course, we are live today. We focus on this particular day. It's not a day off for us because we want to be able to cover the issues that matter to us on this particular day. Events have been taking place all across the country, not just today, but also this weekend. I was in Dallas on Saturday night speaking to the city of Dallas's MLK Gala. On Thursday, it was in Columbus, Ohio as well. You can see both of those speeches on our Black Star Network app, but also on our YouTube channel. On Saturday, an inauguration took place in Virginia for Governor Spanberger, but also for the first African-American Attorney General for the Commonwealth of Virginia, J. Jones Jr. And so he was inaugurated. He joins us right now on Roland Martin Unfiltered on this great day. Attorney General Jones, glad to have you back on the show.
Having me, and I'm happy to be back as well.
One of the things that I first want to say that was a photo that I saw you posted on social media that actually I'm sure was quite emotional for you, and that you were getting dressed for the day, and your mom was assisting you putting on your dad's cufflinks. He, of course, a giant in the legal circles in Virginia, passed away during the campaign. So it had to be quite emotional for you to be thinking about him on Saturday.
You know, his presence loomed very large over the day, and my father was my best friend and, you know, someone who I leaned on very heavily over the course of my life and my political career. And, you know, I'm just so proud of his legacy. To be one of the few people in the history of this Commonwealth to have served in all three branches of government. You know, his legacy looms large, and I carry that with me every single day. My mother is a giant in her own right. She is a juvenile and domestic relations court judge in Norfolk, which is my hometown. And to put his cufflinks on me that day and then have her administer the oath was a very poignant thing for our entire family. But it was so special, and I'm just happy that my two boys and my wife, Mavis, were able to be standing up there with us as we assume the office of Attorney General.
This is that photo that you posted on Twitter. Anthony, go ahead and go to my iPad right here. And the reason I wanted to start with that, because your father, your mother, yourself committed to the law, and the reality is when we think about this day, think about King's Holiday, we have to think about, of course, the commitment to civil rights, and as he said, forcing America to hold true to what it put on paper. And so when you think about the 1964 Civil Rights Act, the 1965 Voting Rights Act, the 1968 Civil Rights Act, which is the Fair Housing Act, and how all three of those today are under attack, as well as the legacy of Dr. King is also under attack from folks on the right.
You know, look, it's a very, I think, poignant thing for Virginia to have me in this chair as the 49th Attorney General of this Commonwealth and the first Black person to hold this office. And I am coming to you tonight from the Barbara Johns building. That's our office building. And for those folks who do not know, Barbara Johns was a civil rights pioneer in her own right. She helped lead the school walkouts in Prince Edward County and helped eventually desegregate the schools here in Virginia and across this country. And in the building, over the doorway, three words have been inscribed in marble: equality, opportunity, and justice. And that is what we are striving to do here in Virginia, to live by those tenets and to live up to the example of Barbara Johns and Dr. King. We know we have a lot of work to do. And my team of exemplary public servants, people who are dedicated to this state and our best interests, have gotten to work so that we can protect Virginians from the federal overreach that we're seeing that makes us all less safe and less secure, to put money back in people's pockets, and to keep our communities safe too. So we're taking their example, we're living up to their values and their ideals, and we're trying to make our communities just a little bit better than they were yesterday.
You mentioned Barbara Johns, and recently, of course, a statue of her was unveiled in the U.S. Capitol, replacing that of the white domestic terrorist and traitor, General Robert E. Lee. And what was so interesting, you had all of these folks, all of these right-wing folks who were just angry and upset with that. How dare they replace this well-known figure with this unknown woman? They were just trashy left and right. And it goes to show you, look, my book, White Fear, I talk about this, White Fear, how the browning of America is making white folks lose their minds. What you have today in this country are folks who want to go back. They do not want to see progress. They do not want to see the advancement of African Americans. They frankly want to see Jim Crow 2.0.
You know, in Virginia, voters sent a very loud and resounding message in November. We elected our first female governor in the 407-year history of this Commonwealth. We elected our first Muslim woman statewide here in Virginia. I'm the first Black Attorney General. We have a Black House Speaker. The leadership in the Senate, led by Senator Louise Lucas, is a Black woman. You know, in Virginia, we're charting a new course, and we're trying to make sure that not only do our elected officials reflect our community, but that we are protecting people under the law and fighting against all of this chaos and craziness that's coming out of Washington. As I campaigned over the course of the fall, that is what I heard so much from people, that they are worried about how these policies are impacting their lives day to day, whether it be their pocketbooks, whether it be their communities, whether it be the education system. And that's what I think this new era in Virginia will usher in, are people who are dynamic and who are listening and who are being responsive to the needs of the people here in this state. And I hope that we can be a blueprint for folks across the country about how to be successful, but also how to govern. And we've gotten to work. We have joined lawsuits that are going to protect federal workers here in Virginia, going to protect our health care, and going to protect people's pocketbooks. And I look forward to working with other attorneys general from across the country to make people's lives better, to use the tools at our disposal to put money back in people's pocketbooks, and to really achieve these goals that we talked about over the course of the campaign in 2025.
You're the first Black Attorney General of Virginia. Eric Holder was the first Black Attorney General of the United States, and he spoke today at the National Action Network breakfast in Washington, D.C., and he said this, and I'd love to get your thoughts on it.
Now, the forces reshaping our country are testing not only our institutions, but our collective and individual capacity to defend the ideals of this nation. And these actions require from all of us, a clarity of purpose that is equal to the rising stakes. We are seeing a sustained effort to eradicate the Voting Rights Act. That is the crown jewel. That's the crown jewel of the civil rights movement and an essential part of Dr. King's legacy. We are witnessing the weaponization of the Department of Justice by the president and his lackeys to silence his critics and to intimidate voters. We're observing Gestapo tactics by federal immigration law enforcement in Minnesota, as well as around the country. You all remember the name Renee Good. You say her name. You say her name. We are experiencing unprecedented mid-decade gerrymandering attempts designed to disproportionately disenfranchise Black and brown voters as the president desperately clings to power like an insecure dictator. There is a concerted effort to resegregate America. But as dark as things may seem now, we must remember that every generation has been similarly tested. Each time, Americans faced really a critical question. Do we sit back and hope that help comes along, or do we stand together and fight for what we believe in? Now, I know the scale of what we're up against can seem overwhelming. State-sponsored attempts at oppression always appear that way. Think about Jim Clark. Think about Bull Connor. Think about Ross Barnett. Think about George Wallace. State attempts at oppression always appear overwhelming. And it's only human to hope for someone else to step in, to pray for a miracle, to pray for a savior, to look to the horizon, hoping to see the cavalry coming to the rescue. But here's the hard truth. There are no reinforcements on the way. There's no miraculous rescue that is coming. We are the cavalry.
Attorney General Jones, I wanted to play that because you're replacing somebody, Republican, MAGA supporter who did not defend civil rights. You had the president of the University of Virginia forced to resign over the issue of diversity, equity, inclusion. You had the Trump administration attacking the president of George Mason University. They forced out the first black superintendent at of course, the Military Institute there, VMI, in Virginia as well. You saw the undoing of civil rights, the lack of defense when it comes to voting rights. What do you make of what Attorney General Eric Holder said there? And I absolutely believe that. And we are the cavalry because these folks are in charge in Washington, the House, the Senate, and the White House. And we've got to be using everything that we can. And frankly, Democrat attorneys general have been leading that fight nationally.
Well, look, Eric Holder has always been someone who I've looked up to and I've respected. You can see just over my shoulder that there's a picture of the two of us chatting a few years ago. And I think you have correctly identified the Democratic attorneys general are stepping up. This is a moment when people are looking toward attorneys general in particular to fight the federal overreach that we're seeing in Washington. All of the craziness and all of the chaos leaves people unsettled. People, frankly, are fearful. They're scared of what they're seeing coming out of the Capitol, and they're looking for states to fill the void. And that's exactly what I ran on last year in 2025. And I think that was validated with our resounding election victory. And I think that's why we did so well up and down the ballot here, because people in Virginia, in particular, because of our proximity to Washington, are looking for people to help, to uphold the rule of law, to protect our values, to protect our freedoms, to protect our institutions, and to protect our ideals. And that is what we're doing. That's why we hit the ground running, joining lawsuits, making sure that we are enacting our 30-day review of all existing litigation that my predecessor entered us into, to make sure that we are pursuing the interests and needs of the people of Virginia in this particular moment. And I look forward to working with attorneys general from across the country to make sure that we're doing that. We are stronger when we have greater numbers. I'm the 24th Democratic Attorney General. We hope to add to those ranks in 2026 because our livelihoods depend on it. And that's something that I continue to be committed to, and will use every tool at my disposal to make sure that we're protecting Virginians, protecting their rights, and living up to the dreams and ideals that Dr. King has talked about and that we've sort of dwelled on for a long time, because we draw strength from those words, right? This morning, I was in Petersburg. I was in a march with community members, and then we had a church service. And I was just so full of hope for these new days in Virginia, the sort of new era that ushered in on Saturday. And we're going to use all of our energy and all of our time and all of our resources to make sure that we're meeting the needs of people here in this Commonwealth right now.
I'm not going to name the school. I know what it is. I know the HBCU. And I know also the PWIs. There have been schools in Virginia, state schools, that have been scared to death over the last year of even having black speakers talking about black history. They are afraid that the Trump administration is going to target them and pull the research funding. What do you say to colleges and universities in Virginia who are scared to death of this MAGA administration targeting universities, who invite black scholars and black historians and having black history discussions? I mean, these people are targeting books and things along those lines. What do you say to them, how you are going to proceed as Attorney General to defend their interests against these attacks?
Well, I think, at the outset, people in Virginia have been really, really disappointed and really scared by the way that the previous administration tried to politicize education, not just in the K-12 space, but in the higher ed space. Every person here in this Commonwealth is incredibly proud of our higher education institutions, whether they be public or private. And frankly, as Attorney General, my job is to represent these universities. And my commitment has been to providing top flight legal service so that these universities can do what they do best, which is educate our students. And that is what we're going to do. We're going to make sure that we're supporting these places, working with these institutions to give them the legal advice that they need and that they deserve. And we're not going to use our students, our teachers, administrators, our educators as political pawns. Those days are long gone. We have a commitment to our people. We have a commitment to our students. And I look forward to working with the leadership at universities across this Commonwealth to figure out the best way for us to meet the needs for our students so that we can develop this talent, keep them here in Virginia, and continue to grow our economy. That is something that Governor Spanberger remains committed to. She just talked about that tonight in her State of the Commonwealth. And I think the House of Delegates and the Senate of Virginia are all in line with that mission, because that's what the voters told us last year, that they were tired of this politicization of our education systems and our students and our teachers and our parents and our administrators. We should be working together to find solutions to improve our education system, not pitting these groups against each other to get headlines, to get cheap headlines, and set our students back.
Got questions from my panel. Dr. Ome Congo Debingas, a senior professorial lecturer, School of International Service at American University, author of Lies About Black People and How to Combat Racism out of D.C. Dr. Avis Jones-DeWeaver, author of How Exceptional Black Women Lead, Unlocking the Secrets to Creating Phenomenal Success in Career and in Life, co-founder and editor-in-chief Max Black's Media out of National Harbor. Joining me in studio, Cameron Trimble, CEO, Hip Politics Media, former White House senior advisor. All right, let's get it going. Cameron, you first. Your question for Attorney General Jay Jones.
How are you doing, Attorney General? And congratulations again on being inaugurated. My question, it pulls on the thread that Roland was talking about, in the sense that it really feels like it is the states versus the federal administration in so many different ways. And with Virginia being right in the back door of Washington, D.C., I think so many eyes will be directly on your state and on your leadership, because Virginia, quite frankly, was a bellwether for what we think's to come in these upcoming elections. How do you plan to prioritize what battles you do get into with maybe some federal overreach or the Trump overreach from his administration?
Well, thank you for your kind words about our inauguration. It was indeed historic and a very special moment for this Commonwealth. I will also note that this inauguration took place on Doug Wilder's 95th birthday, which I think is incredibly special as well. And, look, I think when I campaigned across the state last year, the overarching theme was that people were very scared and sick of what was coming out of Washington, these policies that were setting us back. It's exactly why we've joined several lawsuits already to protect Virginia's values and our interests. But I will be the first person to tell you that if there is a policy that is coming out of Washington that is good for Virginia, I'm ready to work with this administration. We just haven't seen anything come yet that's going to put us in a better place. In fact, everything is trying to take us backward or trample on our rights and our freedoms. And so anytime that those values or our values and those rights and those freedoms are threatened, we will be there. We're using every tool in our toolbox in this office to protect Virginians. That's what I was elected to do. I believe the most important thing and responsibility for any elected leader is to keep people safe and keep your community safe. And whether that takes the form of a lawsuit, of an investigation, we're going to do that. We have a really talented team of people that we have brought in who are exceptional public servants, who are top flight lawyers, who are ready to get this office back on track and really fight for Virginia instead of letting Donald Trump run roughshod over us. They soundly rejected that at the polls in November, and we have a job to do, and we have promises to deliver on, and I'm excited to do that.
Avis Jones-DeWeaver.
Once again, also congratulations, Attorney General. So I know you all should be very proud. As a Virginia native, I know I'm very proud that the Virginia has now been reclaimed with people who have common sense and greatly adept at what you do. So my question for you, though, tonight is that it's really no secret that this administration has been targeting democratically run states. So one might anticipate that if not today, if not tomorrow, there may be a point in which Virginia might be specifically targeted by this administration. Are you all foreseeing that as a possibility and starting to, in essence, get some ducks in a row in the way of figuring out the best way to protect Virginians from what we are really seeing as the real-time tyrannical federal government?
Well, we had a really, really talented transition team who spent 2 months between election day and Saturday getting ready for us to take office. And one of the things that we focused in on was not just the affirmative litigation that we know is out there from other Democratic attorneys general, across the country, but the defensive litigation that may come out of the attacks that we're seeing from Washington. We collaborate very closely with our federal delegation, which thankfully is a majority Democratic with two Democratic United States senators and several wonderful members of Congress like my Congressman Bobby Scott and Jennifer McClellan. And so we stay in very close communication so that we can be apprised of things that they may see or hear that are coming down the line. But we are very prepared to fend off any of those potential attacks, to put Virginia first. I think what you saw over the course of the last 4 years with my predecessor was that he would rather serve Donald Trump than serve the people of Virginia. My job as Attorney General and my fiduciary duty runs to the people here. And so, whatever form that takes to protect them and to protect our values and our interests, we're going to do that. And so, we are girding ourselves for any potential outcome. But right now, we're trying to be aggressive and we're trying to make sure that we hit the ground running, which is exactly what we did to put Virginia back in a better standing after being, I'd say, left behind by the policies of the Trump administration that were sanctioned by my predecessor for far too long.
Congo.
Congratulations once again. This is just an amazing feat that you accomplished. My question is, what advice do you have as it relates to other Democrats going into the midterms? Because not only did you just clear house as it relates to Democrat election, but the diversity is just so incredible. And Democrats are getting advised to run away from their base. Some are saying run towards their base. What would you advise to Democrats across this nation? We know every state and counties are different, but what was your recipe for success that you would advise them going forward?
Well, thank you for your words of congratulations. It does mean a lot to me. And look, I'll say this. In Virginia, people are obviously very scared of Donald Trump and the policies that were coming out of Washington. But what I think was also very important for us as Democrats is that we had an affirmative message. We talked about the things that our voters were talking to us about, and we were listening. We kept our ears open and our mouths closed, and they talked about affordability. And that's exactly why we talked about how we could use this office to put money back in people's pockets. My career as an assistant attorney general and focusing on consumer protection, I think lended itself to that moment and to this moment where we can use this office to be dynamic and find ways to help people out when they're suffering economically, to keep our communities safe, and to make sure that we're defending Virginia. I think, the president certainly is a presence that looms large in electoral politics right now, but we've got to go one step further, which is to be solutions oriented and mission driven. And that really doesn't have any sort of specific recipe. It depends on where you are. It depends on what state you're running in. It depends on what community you live in. But when you bring those ideas and those solutions to the voters, I think they will validate you. And that's exactly what happened in Virginia, where, again, we made history. We have our first female governor. We have our first Muslim elected statewide here in Virginia. I'm the first Black attorney general in the 407-year history of this Commonwealth. And we have a majority in the House of Delegates that has grown from a 2-seat majority to a 13 or 14-seat majority. So, I think we can really be a model for folks across the country, but I don't want folks to lose sight of the fact that they've got to go into those communities, they've got to listen, and really be those solutions-oriented candidates to say, okay, yes, we oppose Donald Trump and bad policies, but we also have ideas for how to fix that.
Black Star Network anchor Brittany Noble, your question for Attorney General Jay Jones.
Well, congratulations on your first day in office. I want to know more about some of your priorities, some of those top priorities, and then what can Virginia do to support you?
Well, thank you for your kind words. And, we were able to hit the ground running at 12:01 on Saturday, joining lawsuits that are going to protect our federal workers from those illegal mass layoffs last year, that are going to protect people's pocketbooks by joining the lawsuit that was trying to dismantle the CFPB, and joining lawsuits that are going to protect healthcare and education here too. Virginia was put in a bad spot because the president was basically doing whatever he wanted to harm Virginia citizens because he had an attorney general who was going to do whatever he said. That's not the case now. There is a real opportunity for us to get Virginia back in the game, to be a leader in this space as well. And I'm looking forward to doing that. Like I said, we've assembled a really diverse group of people and talented individuals who are ready to help. And that's something that I think Virginia should be very proud of. We're going to continue to focus on protecting against federal overreach. We're also going to continue to focus on keeping costs low, making Virginia more affordable, finding every possible way to root out waste, fraud, and abuse, and to make sure that we keep our communities safe. Those are the things that voters talked about over and over and over again, and we listened. And so now we've got to put those campaign promises into practice, and we've already done that. And there's more to come, which I'm very, very proud of and very excited about. Hopefully, people in Virginia will continue to share their concerns with us. We are here to listen, and I want them to know that we will be meeting them where they are. We're not just going to sit up here in Richmond and keep to ourselves. We're going to be out in the communities, rolling up our sleeves, making sure that we're finding ways to be dynamic and to use this office to take on challenges that they see. And it doesn't matter if you live in Norfolk, if you live in Southwest Virginia, if you live in the Shenandoah Valley or Southside or Northern Virginia, our office is here to help. And we will be there. We will be present. We will be visible. And hopefully it's something that Virginians can finally be proud of.
All right. Virginia Attorney General Jay Jones Jr., I certainly appreciate it. Thanks a bunch.
Thank you very much. I'll see you guys next time.
Indeed. All right, folks, got to go to a break. We come back. We'll hear from Bernice King, Martin Luther King III, talking this day on the federal holiday of their father, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. You're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered right here on the Black Star Network.
Next on the Black Table with me, Greg Carr. America is being reshaped in real time by a group of 6 people, unelected and without any checks and balances. By the end of the current Supreme Court session, education, the workplace, who gets to elect our leaders, and so much more could radically change. This week, we reconvene our legal roundtable and look at what the new America may look like and how we should respond. That's next on the Black Table, right here on the Black Star Network.
So Martin Luther King. Now, for Martin Luther King, who was the main warrior for the black people, as far as I'm concerned at that time, you know, I wasn't as surprised that they killed him as I was when they killed Malcolm X. You know what I mean? I wasn't as surprised because Martin was into a lot of stuff that a lot of people, bigots, hated. Mm-hmm. He was a marked man. I didn't expect it. I was hoping that it would never come to that, you know what I mean? But it did not surprise me because of who he was and what he was doing, you know. Horrible day. Horrible, just, oh man, here we go again.
All right, folks, that was my interview several years ago with the great Smokey Robinson. All right, folks, joining us right now is House Democratic Leader Hakeem Jeffries on this MLK 2026. Congressman, glad to have you back on Roland Martin Unfiltered.
With you, happy King Day.
Yes, sir. One of the things that absolutely drives me crazy on this day is when many of your colleagues on the other side post on social media and they post their quotes about Dr. King and they vote against his agenda. And what I always say is I don't want to hear folk on this day talk about King in this wonderful, nice way. You know, he was this, he was that, when they also oppose the agenda. If you're going to stand with King, then stand with King, but don't oppose the agenda, but then celebrate the man, because the man was about his agenda, which was poor people and disenfranchised people.
That's exactly right. All manner of social media posts you'll see coming from my extremist colleagues on the other side of the aisle trying to lift up Dr. King as if they are interested in his life, his leadership, and his legacy. When we return to Washington tomorrow, they'll be doing everything they can to undermine voting rights, civil rights, racial justice, social justice, and economic justice. And Roland, as you know, this is just consistent with their general hypocrisy. I mean, this is the same group of people in many instances. I'm not questioning anyone's faith, but they go to church and they pray on Sunday, and then they come to Washington, D.C., and they pray, P-R-E-Y, on the American people, the weak, pray on the poor, the sick, the afflicted, the least, the lost, the left behind, pray on Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. This is their legislative agenda. And yet they pretend as though they are following the teachings that have urged us to look out for the least of these amongst us.
Well, I will call out them on their faith because one of the things that they do is they love the Catholic Church when it comes to their position on abortion, but they despise the Catholic Church's position on the death penalty and standing up for the rights of undocumented workers.
I think there's no doubt about that, and we see this in so many different areas. Listen, we, as Jim Clyburn says, he's a Matthew 25 and 35 Christian. And that's what our faith teaches us. I grew up in the Cornerstone Baptist Church, and we're going to continue. Dr. King, of course, was a great civil rights hero and leader. He was a Baptist preacher, and it was his faith that drove sort of the mission that he led the country on, which was incredibly successful. But now we know that that mission is under full and complete assault by Donald Trump and his henchmen, and we're going to have to do all we can to fight through the trials, the tribulations, and the turbulence so we can come out stronger as a country on the other side.
I have said since the inauguration that we have a massive effort going on when it comes to MAGA to defund Black America. They are attacking academics, they're attacking health, they're attacking nonprofits, they're attacking the economic infrastructure, they're attacking the civil rights infrastructure. This Louisiana-Cali decision could wipe out 1/3 of the Congressional Black Caucus. It could take out numerous Black state senators, state representatives, county commissioners, city councilmen, school board members all across the South. And the Republican Party, that's what they want. They are afraid of Black political power, and they are attacking all of this because they want, frankly, Jim Crow 2.0.
I've often observed that while Jim Crow may be dead, he's got some nieces and nephews that are alive and well, running around the country trying to seize power. We want to move the country forward. They clearly are trying to turn back the clock. We want to bring people together. They are regularly trying to tear us apart. And we, of course, have always believed in truth and reconciliation. These extremists want to erase Black history, erase civil rights history, but we're not going to let them do it because Black history, we know, is American history. And we need to lean into that history now more than ever. The lessons that we learned from Dr. King, from John Lewis, from Fannie Lou Hamer, from Rosa Parks and others, they showed up, they stood up, they spoke up for what they knew was right to try to make this country the best version of herself. They had the character, the courage, and the conviction to face down Jim Crow, vicious racism, and authoritarianism in the Deep South. But now, of course, you got some people within this administration, inspired by the person who actually is sitting at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, who want to rip away all of the progress that has been made. We cannot let it happen. We're going to make sure that there are free and fair elections in November. And because there will be free and fair elections in November, we're going to make sure we take back control of the House of Representatives.
Well, Donald Trump the other day said that the Civil Rights Act was hurtful to whites in this country. I gave a speech to the city of Dallas MLK gala on Saturday, and I made this statement. Anthony, go to my iPad, and there's a guy who's running for Congress, last name Zishan. He actually posted this on his social media, and I said, are you going to stand with Dr. King, or are you going to stand with someone that wants to be a king? And that's what we're dealing with. Donald Trump has no respect for Congress. He has no respect for laws, no respect for the judiciary, no respect for anything. He told the New York Times the only thing stopping him, he said he can do whatever he wants. The only thing stopping him is his own morality. And so he has no respect whatsoever. And so what do you say to people in terms of how Democrats are going to counter him and that MAGA agenda this year in 2026? And what should folks be focusing on in these primaries and, of course, the general election?
What's important to us, you've got affordability and you've got accountability. On the affordability side, listen, Donald Trump was able to lie his way back into office by promising that he was going to lower costs on day one. Costs haven't gone down. costs have gone up. Life is more expensive in the United States of America. Trump tariffs are imposing thousands of dollars of additional costs, and he's done nothing to lower the high cost of living. We'll focus on that to try to bring about a country where when you work hard and play by the rules, you can live a comfortable life, an affordable life, and a good life. And we define that clearly: good paying job, good housing, good health care, good education for your children, and a good retirement, which means keep your hands off Social Security and Medicare. At the same period of time, there's got to be accountability. Congress, as you know, Roland, you talk about this often, is not supposed to be a rubber stamp for the president's extreme agenda in this case, but a check and balance on an out of control executive branch. Now, even though we're in the minority, we've been governing in many instances as if we were in the majority, including earlier this month, forcing an up or down vote on a straightforward extension of the Affordable Care Act tax credits for 3 years, and got 17 Republicans to join with every single Democrat. Our view is that we have a broken healthcare system. We've got to fix it. We got to roll back the cuts that they've made to Medicaid, roll back the cuts that they've made to nutritional assistance. They literally rip food out of the mouths of hungry children, seniors, and veterans. And they did that as part of their one big ugly bill so they can enact massive tax breaks for their billionaire donors. We're going to focus on everyday Americans, working class Americans, and middle class Americans.
A couple more minutes left, and I'll ask you this here. What African Americans are also asking is, in terms of, let's say Democrats regain the House in November. Let's say you win that back. Black folks are saying, hey, how are you going to speak to our agenda? The reality is you need significant black support in a lot of these congressional races, especially these U.S., also on the U.S. Senate side, races in Georgia, in North Carolina. You got race in Texas as well. And so what do you say to them of what that's going to look like, what that agenda is going to look like? Because what we continue to hear from people is they say, hey, Democrats want black folks to show up, but Democrats got to show up for black folks.
Absolutely. And listen, we've got to have a robust racial justice agenda and economic justice agenda. On the racial justice side, clearly, some of the things that need to happen is to shore up the Voting Rights Act and the Civil Rights Act, the efforts to roll back the progress that has been made. Right at the top of the list on that side of the agenda, of course, will be passing the John Robert Lewis Voting Rights Enhancement and Advancement Act, which is designed to address what the Supreme Court already did back in 2013 when they struck a blow against Section 5. And we've got to watch what the Supreme Court may try to do in the Louisiana case. We expect to hear from them over the next couple of months, but we are prepared to respond decisively, particularly when we get the gavels back. On the economic justice side, I think there are really three areas where we have to lean in on behalf of Black America, Brown America, communities of color, but certainly within the African American community. That's entrepreneurship, that's homeownership, and that's access to capital. We know that the 1963 March on Washington, its full name was the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom. It was about both civil rights, of course, eventually voting rights in terms of the 1965 Voting Rights Act, but also an economic justice agenda. And we've never been able to fully bring that to life. And in order to do it, we've got to ensure that our communities can be successful economically and self-dependent on the community as opposed to being reliant on anyone else. And that's something that we'll strive to accomplish, build upon with an aggressive agenda in that economic justice space.
Last question for you. As I said, I gave the speech in Dallas on Saturday night. While there, I dropped by Friendship West Baptist Church, where Reverend Frederick Haynes III is the pastor. They had an MLK teach-in. Anthony, go to my iPad. They had an MLK teach-in. They're planning this Freedom Summer there. They're planning to really focus on voter mobilization. It's also the church where one of your House members goes, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. She was in Marshall, Texas over the weekend. Do you plan to endorse in that Democratic primary her race, but also the congressional race that Freddie Haynes is in?
I generally don't get involved in open seat primaries, certainly in the context of House races, but I know the Reverend Dr. Freddie Haynes well. He'll be an amazing member of Congress. I've been to Friendship Baptist Church events, grew up in the Cornerstone Baptist Church, as I mentioned, and Freddie Haynes used to come preach revival every single year in Brooklyn when Harry Starks Wright was my pastor. And so I look forward to serving with the Reverend Dr. Freddie Haynes. He'll be an amazing member of Congress. And as it relates to Jasmine, no one should underestimate her. She's running hard, and I think she brings a lot to the table. And I support all of my colleagues in the House Democratic Caucus, and will do anything that I can do to help her be successful in this primary. And if she makes it through the primary, of course, in the general election.
So I just want to be clear. So you're endorsing Freddie Haynes and Jasmine Crockett?
Well, I haven't formally gotten involved in any of those races. I'll defer to Freddie Haynes and Jasmine Crockett as to the appropriate way for me to weigh in. I leave it to the candidates in that regard. I don't want to preempt anything that may be forthcoming, but I think the positive feelings that I have for both speaks for itself.
All right, then. So as a Texas voter and somebody who actually votes, I'm a constituent of Congressman Jasmine Crockett. I'll be waiting to see how that happens. All right, Congressman Jeffries, we appreciate it. And to Scott Bolden, if he's watching, I keep telling him, I don't mind Kappas coming on my show. I have grace and mercy.
I have grace and mercy. I appreciate you. You're a good alpha brother.
I appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Okay, man.
All right, then, folks, let's get back. Got my panel here. I've got Cameron. I've got Avis Omekongo as well. So I want to start with this one here, and I'll start with you, Omekongo. I played that soundbite from Attorney General Eric Holder. We spoke today at the NAN breakfast. And two things. The reality is we need people to understand that there is indeed an absolute effort to resegregate Black America. But I need folk to understand that this is not about bringing back separate water fountains. This is not about saying, oh no, you can't live here. What we do have to understand is there is an absolute effort to undermine every single civil right that we have fought for, whether it's the 3 Reconstruction Amendments by the radical Republicans in the wake of slavery, whether it is the 1866 Civil Rights Act, we do the 1875 Civil Rights Act, which of course was later overturned in 1883 by the Supreme Court, the 1957 Civil Rights Act, and then the 64, 65, and 68 as well. And so the attack is all about attacking the Black infrastructure, civil rights, economic, again, academic, health, you name it. That is what they are trying to do.
Yeah, and if people don't get it now, I don't know at what point they actually will get it. I mean, 1 year into Trump, what statistic for the Black community is better? Whether we're talking about employment, whether we're talking about health outcomes, I mean, maybe the number of applications to HBCUs, but outside of that, everything is declining. And people should now be seeing that their community is going to be affected in every way, shape, or form. Whether we're talking about law enforcement, you're talking about with Attorney General Jones about schools and diversity and so on and so forth. And look what's happening in our schools as well. Every aspect of our community is being attacked. And people need to be at this point now, especially watching what's going on in Minneapolis with ICE. We have to get out of this mindset of, I'm only going to care when something comes to me. I'm only going to care when something hits me. Because if your community is being hit, then you're being hit as well. And we need a multi-pronged approach in order to be able to fight this. Because Donald Trump literally said, I am against the Civil Rights Act. They made white people bad. They couldn't get jobs. And all of this was lies. But he said it because enough white people thought it all of their lives and were always against it. And so he's given them permission structure upon permission structure in every space that they occupy, whether as a boss, as a principal, as somebody running a bank, to be discriminatory and be unapologetic about it because they know there's an FBI, a Justice Department, and an administration that's going to condone it in every way, shape, or form. If we don't wake up now 1 year into Trump, we should have woke up during the first administration like we were here on the Black Star Network. I don't know what else it's going to take, Roland.
Avis, I mean, we are making this perfectly clear to folks as much as we can. Anthony, go to my iPad. Look at this here. Donald Trump is the first individual occupying the White House who doesn't even acknowledge Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King federal holiday. This is the first time it has happened since Reagan signed the holiday, and of course, even the departure from his first term. Bottom line is, that's all by design. They do not give a damn about black folks, and they want to attack black folks at every turn. And black folks had better wake up, and I'm sick and tired of hearing these black folks who say, oh, I'm gonna sit, I'm tired, I'm gonna sit out, I'm gonna stay on the sideline, all this sort of crap. They are coming after your ass as well. And so I don't care whether you're on the corner, I don't care whether you're in the C-suite, I don't care whether you are blue collar, whether you are white collar, whether you got a degree or not. We see they are coming after black America, period.
Absolutely. And they have already come after Black America. This is not just a future projection conversation. You are one of the few spaces, Roland, you have one of the few spaces that have shared in real time all of the actions that this administration has already taken to rip away our civil rights infrastructure. In fact, what I find very interesting, we're hearing about the anniversary of unfortunately, his first day in office in terms of his inauguration, and we were at the top of the list of who he was looking to attack. Before they had any ICE raids, he was sitting there signing executive orders that was completely obliterating our advancements in civil rights in a number of different ways. Even to the point of actually signing a civil rights, an executive order that would say that it's okay to discriminate specifically for federal contractors, that it's okay to have segregated facilities as federal contractors. It has been that egregious. And so, yes, all the other things that you mentioned are true. We see what's happening with the unemployment rate. We're seeing what's happened to federal workers that are disproportionately Black. We're seeing what's happened with DEI and how that has trickled down in terms of impacting, I believe, not only the culture in corporate America, but also the hiring patterns and promotion patterns in those spaces as well. So all of those things are real. But what we need to make sure that we do is use the power that we still have in terms of our voting power, because we have a midterm election that's coming up. And if we don't do everything we can to get these people out of office, not only in the House, I think we also need to go for the Senate. We need to really make some sort of major shifts in order to put a stop to this train. And that's the only power that we have right now until we get him completely out of the White House.
Cameron, and let me be, this is not self-serving what I'm about to say. When I look at right now, and I'm always appreciative of the folks who watch our show. 1,500 folks live. We know it's a holiday. A lot of days we have 2,000, 2,500, 3,000, or even higher, 4,000. But here's the thing that I'm always talking about. When it's a sports topic on some shows, you go to some of these YouTube channels, it's 30, 35, 40,000 folks who are watching live. When I look at the comments on certain stuff, on certain posts on Instagram and others, I'm seeing 40, 50, 100,000, 200,000 likes. I'm seeing 8, 10, 20,000 comments. And what I'm saying that what's going on right now, that Black folks had better be flocking to Black news and information sources, because these folks are going to look up and say, oh my God, what the hell happened? And the last year, I mean, it's what? So tomorrow is 1 year since the inauguration. I mean, we've seen the wipeout of billions of dollars. We have seen the wipeout and the attacks on numerous laws and executive orders. And I'm seeing Black folks walking around clueless and going, oh my God, I didn't know those things were happening. I'm like, yeah, because you watching the wrong shit. Millennials, Gen Z, Gen Alpha better realize that what they are trying to do, they are trying to wipe out a future for millennials, Gen Z, and Gen Alpha if you Black.
I agree, Roland. And there's two stats that I wanted to bring up to kind of address that. Just today, Axios put out an article around how Gen Z is not being taught and being disconnected from the civil rights era, because more than half of the states don't even require you to teach about civil rights. So there is a whole generation that is coming up that won't even appreciate and understand what's happening with civil rights, won't appreciate and understand what's happening with Martin Luther King Day and those tenets. And so that is a generation that is coming up, and there's just uneven education there. And then the second thing is like the media landscape. I know you mentioned in terms of you just had like that Drewski skit that went crazy talking about black pastors. That gets hundreds of millions of views because there's some comedy in it and social commentary. People are talking all about that. But when things that are actually affecting the community, you don't see the same kind of reverberation and reaction videos and things to that nature. I think part of it is the fact that people are looking for some escape. I just think, quite frankly, people are just looking to get away and get some sports and some escape.
Here's my whole piece. I get the escape part. But what I need them to understand is that what's going on while they are escaping, the other side is literally obliterating. And you can escape for this moment, but then when you bring your ass back, you can be like, Armageddon happened. What happened? Because you were busy escaping.
But then also you got to look at the coverage and the way we get information right now. It has to be so much more intentional, because when you've got CBS News essentially co-opted with the elephant, you got some of these different.
Okay, but it is intentional. But the people who are being most impacted, they've got to be intentional. And all I'm saying is I need folk to realize that what they are trying to do today is to impact Black America for the next minimum 50 years. If you are a 20-year-old today, they want your ass jacked up minimum till when you're 70. See, so I need people to understand, this ain't about, oh, this thing could change in the next election. No. This is Project 2025 and Project 2026 and Project 2027 is about enacting an agenda that is going to absolutely curtail and derail Black America for minimum the next 50 years. That's what they're trying to do. And I just think there are a lot of people who are Gen X, Millennial, Gen Z, Gen Alpha, who don't realize what is really happening right now.
And I think what we got to do is we got to simplify it for people. Unfortunately, I wish people could get more information and be able to handle some of that. But the public has often been able to focus on one or two topics. And I think we just got to simplify it here on your network and other places of like, this is what you have to lose, and not just at a large state. We always say Black people are being set back. But what does that actually look like in a money sense? What does that actually look like in a job sense? What does that actually look like in a policing sense? And then kind of what's going on in Minnesota and things of that nature. When it's brought to our doorstep, we saw how we reacted with George Floyd. I'm not wishing on any of those types of things to happen, but I think that kind of stark contrast, that kind of real shock, violence, those types of things are what wake us up.
Well, I tell you what, you can't holler be woke, and then you need something else to wake you up. And that to me, Omekongo, is really what folk have to understand. And again, I'm saying the onus is on everybody. I'm saying that if you're a Gen X and you've got children and you've got grandchildren and you've got nieces and nephews, you need to be saying, where are you getting your information from? And if they say TikTok and Instagram, well, who are you following on TikTok and Instagram? If you getting your shows from certain radio shows, well, what's the radio show? What are they actually talking about? What are they feeding you? Because what we are dealing with right now, is a very surgical attack on Black America. And I'm telling you right now, it can't just be baby boomers and some Gen X who gets it. Black folks had realized, and when people say, oh man, that voting stuff, guess what? The reality is, when you do vote, there is one way where you can knock these folks out, is to throw them out. And that only can happen at the ballot box.
Look, well, we can show up to as many protests as possible as people want, but as Bayard Rustin said, he said, we protested because we didn't have the right to vote. When you have the right to vote, you don't need to protest because your vote is your protest. And so many of us are disconnected from that. And that's why so many people stayed home. And what you talked about with the information sources is also important because, going to what Cameron said and what you said last week, Roland Martin, is really, I've been posting about this. You're saying they turned Dr. King into a bobblehead, right? You have the people who know about the civil rights movement because they lived through it. You got guys like me who were born after it, who got the diluted version of Dr. King, the I Have a Dream, never play the other parts of the mountaintop speech like you talk about, that talks about everything else. And now, as Cameron's point, you got this new generation that is getting nothing. Even in the states where it's allowed to be taught, they're still not getting enough. And so that is why it is important for all of us to do exactly what you said. Fine, you're going to follow this guy on TikTok, but you got to follow Black Star Network or any other outlet that's on these spaces. We have to direct them to these spaces. The newspapers we read, most of them are gone or in some online space. And so if we don't know where the spaces are on Facebook and Instagram and other and fan base, which is, doing a lot of this work, we have to find it and show it to them. Because a lot of the kids, they will listen if they're steered towards something. But a lot of us have this mentality, oh, they just don't care. They just want to play music and go party. Many will listen if we don't give up on them. You know it all the time, Roland. You run into middle school students, high school students who listen to you or listen to you in the car with their parents. We can't give up on this generation because there's already a whole infrastructure pulling their attention in the opposite direction, which is away from our history and away from our culture, which makes it easier for them to undermine us. And we have to keep fighting that.
So, Avis, the article that Cameron referenced, it was an Axios article. This is what it was. The civil rights era is losing its grip on young Americans. It says the civil rights era is no longer the central reference point for how many young Americans understand race, justice, and power, a generational shift reshaping politics, education, and activism in the U.S. Well, first of all, duh. I mean, let's be perfectly clear. If you talk about the civil rights era, officially, if you will, you're talking about December 1st, 1955, Montgomery bus boycott through Dr. King's assassination. Could bring it back a year, Brown versus Board of Education decision. So that's 1954, including also August 28th, 1955, the heinous lynching of Emmett Till. So you could say Brown versus Board of Education is 54, going through 68. That's, of course, 14 years. But when we talk about today, and this is where, again, these white media outlets don't seem to understand. They want to skip over Jenna 6. They want to skip over Trayvon Martin. They want to skip over Michael Brown, John Crawford III. They want to skip over Eric Garner. And then so basically how they want to frame this, they want to frame this as civil rights area and then George Floyd. No, it was a lot of things. I mean, if you talk about, I got an interview coming out with Elliot Williams talking about the Bernie Getz shooting. And listen, Bensonhurst and all that stuff that was happening in New York in the 90s. And so it's a whole lot we can talk about here. And so that's the problem, the reference point, how you talk about all of these issues. And so my deal is, if I'm talking to millennials, Gen Z, Gen Alpha, I'm including these things that have happened, not just 54 to 68, but 68 to 80, 80 to 90, 90 to the 2000s, and now present day.
I think that's absolutely true. Here's what we have to remind. We have to remember that these people don't have our best interests at heart. Okay, there's a reason why they pulled our history out of public schools all across the nation in way too many states. And it is because they do not want our children to know that history. They do not want their children to know that history. And there has been some other research that suggests that the less specifically Black young people know about their own history, the more likely they are to vote to be in favor of Donald Trump, for example. So, when we are detached from our roots, we are very easily swayed. We're very easily brainwashed. We're very easily sort of manipulated as a tool to be used for our own destruction. That's number one. Number two, I think it's very important that Black people then understanding that take up the mantle to be able to organize to teach our own children. We cannot wait for the public school systems to get this right, particularly throughout the South. I don't expect Texas, honestly, to ever change in my lifetime. I'm not holding my breath for anything to change in terms of the curriculum in Florida. But Black families in Florida and Black families in Texas and all over can get together and organize Saturday academies and teach our own history, because that's what we need to do. And then thirdly, I would say that in terms of young people, let's not write them all off. I'm the mother of a Gen Z. I'm the mother of a millennial. And if anything, my Gen Z is even that much more radical than my millennial, though both of them have sense and they understand the threat of this administration. But the main frustration of my Gen Zer is not that he doesn't want to vote. He will vote. But his frustration is that he doesn't see the Democratic Party fighting enough. He wants to see more action in the Democratic Party. He wants to see the Democratic Party be more aggressive. They aren't aggressive enough for him. And so I believe that if the Democratic Party were more aggressive, would show some heft and some fight in their spirit, they would naturally attract young people. I don't believe that most young people don't care about politics. I don't think that they are inspired to really support candidates who they don't believe will fight for them. Many of them will do it anyway, like my son, but he does it, I will tell you, holding his nose because he wants more fighters. And if he finds someone that will inspire him in that way, he will come out and vote. And it's not just him. If you look at the Mamdani election, when you saw the overrepresentation of young people voting, it is because, I believe, not just because of this issue of affordability. I think it was also because they saw a fighter in him. And that's something that the Democratic Party needs to replicate writ large.
But here's the thing, Cameron, that first of all, I absolutely agree with what Ava says there. But this is the piece to me that is always critical. I always talk about what the nuance is. And the nuance always is, and I've had to deal with this with people, where I'll explain, if you want something to change on a school board, remember, if there are nine people and you vote for one, you need 4 more votes. You need 5, you need at least 5. If it's the city council, depending upon the size of the city council, you need the majority. What I'll say is, I think back to 2025. There's a lot of people were saying, Democrats, what y'all gonna do? Sitting there going, do you not know who controls the House, the Senate, and the White House? And the key, though, I think, this is where it jumps out, to the point that Ava's just made. When you do have the power, do you use it? I think what we are witnessing now, where you have, is Donald Trump a thug? Yes. Does Donald Trump not believe in morals, values, principles, ethics? Yes. But what you are seeing is a Republican Party that says, damn all lines, damn all speed bumps. You don't hear them saying, oh, we can't do that. And so what I'm hearing people say is, Democrats, if your ass get the White House back, go to the mat. If you get the House and the Senate, I don't want to hear this bullshit. Oh, we can't do that. We can't. If there is one thing that we see with Republicans holding power, is that they use power. They wield power. They actually execute an agenda, and they say, damn everyone else, we're going to do it. That is the lesson that Democrats had better wake up. And look, Democrats don't have the same league that Republicans do, because you're either right or hard right. But Democrats had better understand, if you get control of the House, yes, Trump can veto. If you get control of the House, if you were able to somehow get control of the Senate, what Democrats can't pray for is a Fetterman ends up acting like a cinema in a mansion. Let's say Democrats get 51 seats in the Senate. Let's say they win North Carolina and they win Georgia. They upset Collins in New Hampshire. And let's say they're able to win the Senate seat in Alaska or Iowa, or by God, or by miracle, win the seat in Texas. And all of a sudden, you somehow look up and you got 51, 52, 53. The scare for a lot of people is you're going to have 2 or 3 weak-ass centrist Democrats who hold up progress. That also, I think, is what Avis is saying.
I think it's a couple things. One, they've got to get there. And I'm a creature of campaigns. And the campaign rhetoric, even when you hear it now, or the rhetoric you saw during the government shutdown started to build up, and that energy started to build up. But people are not voting for people who are non-fighters. If you were not coming out saying these things,
right?
Like the norms be damned. I mean, I come from a different time, but when I got into politics and when I got on the Capitol Hill, it was right as the Tea Party was coming along. And I watched how that first year pre-Tea Party and post-Tea Party, how so many of those norms are thrown out the window, and you still had so many of a contingent of both Republicans and Democrats who said, hey, we're working and we're going to still try to be bipartisan. We're still going to talk to the American people as if it was pre-Tea Party times. Pretty soon they caught up and they realized that wasn't the case. I think what we have to learn, and this is not just Democrats, this is just a people thing. If people do not see you fighting and see you throwing out those norms, seeing you name people, see you name what you're going to do, consistently fight back. The reason why the Jasmine Crockett's and the Gavin Newsoms have at least been getting so much energy online is because they're with the times. They're using culturally relevant language. They're speaking directly to people, and they seem to be fighting. They're both leading with policy, leading with attitude, leading with energy, and they're leading with laughs. Because to our earlier point when we were saying people are looking for some escape, well, I hate that we got to turn politics into some level of entertainment, but you got to realize what people are paying attention to and responding to, and we have to do that. Because we have to get there before, and then if we get into office, it doesn't need to be just pushing these bills through. You need to name these bills salacious bills so people understand. Yep. No, this bill is taking something back. This bill is fighting something there. We need to make these public stands not just in the pit of the House or the floor of the Senate, the floor of the House. We need to be in the streets. Like this is a modern media, digital first, 360, all on assault that starts in this election season. And then the moment we get elected, wherever you are, you've got to be on board. And for those centrists and those people who get scared, because you get some people who get, I barely got elected, or I'm in a more conservative state, I can't do what Mondani did or Gavin Newsom did. Well, then all those who can and use more of their what we call political capital, right, they got to put that out there and shield some of those. But they better get those people in line to make sure at least those votes follow.
Absolutely. All right, folks, got to go to a break. We come back. More on Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network here on MLK Day 2026. Don't forget to support the work that we do. Join our Bring the Funk fan club. If you want to contribute to our Bring the Funk fan club via Cash App, use the Stripe QR code. You see it right here. It's also for credit cards as well. Checks and money order. Make it payable to Roland Martin Unfiltered, P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 2003 7-0196. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo's RM Unfiltered. Zelle, Roland at RolandSMartin.com. Roland at RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. We'll be right back.
When Dr. King called me up and said, I'd like to meet with you. You don't know me, but I have a request to make, and I'm coming to New York. I'd like to talk with you. And we met in the basement of the Abyssinia Baptist Church, and what should have taken, according to him, 20 minutes, took 4 hours. And when that meeting was over, I was in his parade forever. When I talked to A. Philip Randolph, when I talked to Eleanor Roosevelt, I can go on with a list of celebrity and the power of that century that touched my space, that said, you are worthy, that said, you help us. We delight in what you do. We are rewarded by it. Our causes are won because you brought a population to the table. Because when I did, sometimes I'd ask artists and they'd say no. I said, fine, let's make my next concert in behalf of Dr. King. And I would take time out in that concert to let Dr. King have the platform to speak on the issue. And most of the audiences would write me afterwards and say, we never expected it, but thank you for introducing us to Dr. King. Well, that's worth $1 million. And I am more rewarded by being in that space than I am being in the south of France, which incidentally I do occasionally.
Said the quiet part out loud. Black votes are a threat, so they erased them. After the Supreme Court gutted the Voting Rights Act in 2013, Republican legislatures moved fast. New voter ID laws, polling place shutdowns, purges of black voters from the rolls. Trump's Justice Department didn't stop it, they joined in. In 2018, his DOJ backed Ohio's voter purge system, a scheme that disproportionately erased black voters. Their goal, erase black votes and political power. Yeah, that happened. These are the kinds of stories that we cover every day on Roland Martin Unfiltered. Subscribe on YouTube and download the Black Star Network app. Support fact-based independent journalism that centers African Americans and the issues that matter to our community.
Myself refraining from going to Memphis for a long time. It's just, and I don't like to go to Memphis now. Matter of fact, I go because Memphis has a new meaning to me now. You see, the King, to me, Atlanta was Bethlehem. He had nothing to do with Bethlehem where he was born, and Mason Temple really was Gethsemane, mountaintop, and the balcony was Calvary. In a certain way, I can understand the Bible going back to Atlanta, but he went to heaven from Memphis. It happens to be the place where the poor blacks of the Delta of Mississippi and Arkansas and poor whites of Appalachia meet at that Mississippi River. That's where he died. That's where he left us. And there's still a story to be told about when blacks from the Delta of Arkansas and Mississippi and who picked cotton and coal miners who dig coal from find common ground, there will be a New Jerusalem, so to speak. So there's not to be said about Memphis as not just a place where he was killed, but as a resurrection site, because the resurrection does not take place far from the crucifixion. Memphis has lots of challenge, and there's a new kind of South now. You couldn't have had the Memphis Grizzlies behind the cotton curtain had we not been successful. Atlanta Falcons, Dallas Cowboys. You couldn't have had Toyota, Mississippi had we not been successful. We pulled down the cotton curtain and built a whole new world, a whole new South, which laid groundwork for many new things in America. So his blood fertilized the soil and created a whole new dynamic in American politics.
All right, folks, Reverend Jesse Jackson Sr. there for an interview we did just a few years ago. Today, events took place all across the country here in the nation's capital at the NAN breakfast. We caught up with the MLK III. This is what he had to say on this day, the federal holiday for his father, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
This is a very critical time. I would like to be able to say that we had achieved the dream that my father envisioned and shared for the nation, my father, I should say, and mother. Unfortunately, that is just not true. It does not mean that we cannot. There still is great potential in our nation, in our communities. There's great potential all over. And what I hope people can find is again, I said earlier, out of the mountain of despair, you got to find a stone of hope so that we can lift people. This is a time of lifting. It's challenging in this nation and in this world where we are at odds from a war standpoint, potentially from a war standpoint. where we're at odds because of immigration. That is an issue that should be resolved. But it's how we've chosen to resolve it, which is the challenge. At a time when medical prices are going up, people have to decide if I'm going to pay for health care, if I'm going to pay for food. What I do know is no matter how difficult it is, and God knows it's difficult for a lot of people, that we got to hold on because it can get better. My dad, my mom, my family, hopefully we are showing the nation that endurance overcomes. I mean, there was no Civil Rights Act before 1964. There was no Voting Rights Act before 1965. There was no fair housing legislation before 1968. But because my dad and his team and many of us around our nation endured, today those things are barely in place, although there are some who are trying to turn the clock back. We cannot allow that. It is, the government is supposed to be for the people, we the people. When we the people stand up, and I must add in nonviolence, Dad's model showed that we can overcome.
Folks, Maryland Senator Angela Alsobrooks, first of all, he was speaking there at the MLK Memorial. The MLK Memorial Foundation, the Memorial Foundation, they have an annual wreath-laying ceremony there, and we, of course, stream that live. Here is Maryland Senator Angela Alsobrooks, who was the keynote speaker there.
We must fight even harder to protect what is right. When people try to erase history and water down the impact that our ancestors had, it underscores how necessary it is to reject the lies about who we are. When deceivers spread false portrayals, hoping to divide a nation that simply wants this nation to live up to its creed, it's essential that we push back against this tool that keeps the unheard muted by injustice. That's why this ceremony is for us and for our commitment to this work. King's legacy doesn't just live in his words. It's kept alive through what his words inspire us to do. Because we can say injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere, but do we move as if we believe that's true? Do we turn a deaf ear to someone's call for justice if it's inconvenient to our comfort? Do we settle for a society with violence and substandard living conditions in neighborhoods? Do we ignore the persistent economic inequality in our nation? Or do we fight for an economy that's equitable and provides opportunity for all Americans? Are we satisfied with a legal system that can be weaponized against the least of us? Or do we keep fighting for a system that treats everyone fairly? Do we relax in the knowledge that our own rights aren't being suppressed? Or do we push back on the inhumane treatment of those from a different background? Dr. King's words endure, but sadly, so do some of the threats to justice that he fought against. Even now, there are people being targeted and terrorized for answering the call for justice. It's a solemn reminder that there's still more work to do. But it's also our motivation, because somewhere, someone is still holding hope that help is on the way. The call for justice still stands, so the work of this movement still lives on. No abuse of power can kill it. No assault on democracy can suppress it. And it's on us to carry it forward. Carved into this very monument, there's a quote that I love from Dr. King's Nobel Peace Prize acceptance speech that says, "I believe that unarmed truth and unconditional love will have the final word in reality. That is why right, temporarily defeated, is stronger than evil triumphant." That strong faith of Dr. King reminds me, I think, of the most important memory we have of all of him. And that is that he was a minister of the gospel of Jesus Christ. It was at his core, and his memory brings to mind the old spiritual beams of heaven as I go. Harder yet may be the fight. Right may often yield to might. Wickedness a while may reign. Satan's cause may seem to gain. But there's a God that rules above with a hand of power and a heart of love. And if I'm right, he'll fight my battle. I shall have peace someday. We're right about it, and justice will come. Happy birthday, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. We love you forever.
Every year on this day at Ebenezer Baptist Church, the church where Dr. King preached, the MLK Center, they actually have an event at Ebenezer. We'll also live stream that. Here is Dr. King's daughter, Bernice King.
On what would have been his 97th birthday and the 41st observance of the national holiday, 41 years in. And I dare to say and declare, and we ain't going nowhere. We do so at a time when the world is trembling under the weight of its own contradictions, a time when inhumanity, injustice, and inequity have risen to devastating heights, a time when our nation is fractured by polarization, poisoned by fear, and paralyzed by division. We gather in a moment charged with both peril and promise, a moment when the soul of our nation is crying out, not with a whisper, but with a groan of urgency for healing, for direction, for a way forward that binds our wounds rather than deepens them. We are living in a moral crisis, not symbolic, but so deep. Our humanity is at stake. There is a battle going on between good and evil, and the future of this nation and the world house hangs in the balance. We must decide whether we will continue down the path of fragmentation or rise together into new possibilities of community. But beneath these visible crises lies a deeper affliction, a crisis of conscience and compassion. We scroll through suffering as if flipping through channels. We debate the humanity of our neighbors as if dignity were a commodity. Fear has become the currency of power. Anger is spoken more fluently than love. Hope is fading into a faint echo. And people are losing faith, yes, in institutions, in one another, in themselves, and even in God. We're divided not only by ideology, but by imagination, unable to imagine a future together. This moment demands more than memory, it demands movement. More than admiration, it demands action. More than commemoration, it demands commitment. Because the forces tearing at our shared humanity are not waiting. Nationalism, extremism, and imperialism are not waiting. The erosion of democracy is not waiting. The massacring of civilians is not waiting. Children pulled from rubble in Gaza, Sudan, Congo, Ukraine, and Haiti are not waiting. Oligarchy masquerading as democracy is not waiting. The normalization of dehumanization, disinformation, and violence is not waiting. Wars raging abroad and in our streets are not waiting. Economic inequality widening day by day is not waiting. Climate disasters devastating homes and hearts are not waiting. Human rights norms being ignored or selectively applied are not waiting. So neither can we wait. This is the hour when truth must be louder than fear. This is the hour when courage must be stronger than convenience. This is the hour when love must be more disciplined than anger. This is the hour when we choose the way that leads to life. That way is the nonviolent way, the love-centered Kingian way, the way that honors the dignity of every person, even adversaries that resist the forces dividing us through ideology and identity, partisanship and propaganda. The nonviolent way insists we cannot build a future apart from one another. We must build a future rooted in justice and compassion. My father often reminded us that we are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. What affects one directly affects all of us indirectly. And so you cannot cancel that garment. You cannot sever that network. I cannot be all that I ought be until you are all that you ought be. Because I am because you are, and you are because I am.
Folks, if you want to understand the Trump administration's attack on black people, all you have to do is look at the decision they made today. Now, this is also what happens when MAGA uses a Negro to attack black people. That Negro they use, and I'm saying that purposely, is HUD Secretary Scott Turner. Scott Turner is a former state legislator in Texas, former football player. And so today, on this day, now let me set this thing up for y'all. Now remember, Dr. King was killed April 4th, 1968. The next day, President Lyndon Baines Johnson sends a letter to the House saying, I think it would behoove us to pass this fair housing bill, which Dr. King gave his life for, because it had been filibustered for 2 years. The filibuster had been broken in the United States Senate, led by black Republican out of Massachusetts, Ed Brooke. But see, what you have to understand is you got black Republicans today who are MAGA kiss-ups, who ain't even close to an Ed Brooke. You should never, ever use Burgess Owens, Wesley Hunt, Byron Donalds, Tim Scott, Scott Turner in the same breath as an Ed Brooke. So here it is on this day. Again, remember, King gets killed April 4th, LBJ sends a letter April 5th, and a week later, that bill is finally passed by Congress. So don't think it wasn't by design that the Trump folk would announce today the scrapping of a Biden-era rule. This is the New York Post in exclusive. HUD terminates Biden-era DEI deal that forced racial preferencing in home appraisal industry, which also is a lie. This is what they said under former President Joe Biden. HUD used disparate impact theory, the idea that a neutral policy has a disproportionately negative effect on underrepresented families, minorities, to impose race-based policies on the Appraisal Foundation, a nonprofit entity authorized by Congress to set qualifications for property appraisers. Now listen to this. Here is again, because that's him right there. That's right there, the Negro who they are using to screw over black people. Property appraisals are an integral component of helping Americans realize the dream of home ownership, HUD Secretary Scott Turner said in the statement. But the Biden administration weaponized the Fair Housing Act to inject DEI into the appraisal industry, focusing on illegal race preferences rather than ensuring every American has equal access to quality, affordable housing. Today, HUD is ending the politicization of property appraisals to restore fairness and equality to civil rights enforcement and housing. Y'all, let me explain something to y'all why that's just bullshit. Now, you got to remember, Biden-Harris really was focused on the issue of ending racism in home appraisals. And so what they did was they looked at the actual data that showed how black people were being absolutely screwed when it came to home appraisals. This right here is a New York Times article from November 2nd, 2022. Widespread racial bias found in home appraisals. Then you go to the story. It says right here that the Biden administration and the Federal Housing Agency released 47 million appraisal reports to the public for the first time. The appraisals, which were compiled between 2013 and 2021, present evidence of a persistent, widespread practice in the home appraisal industry to give higher values to homes when the occupants are white and devalue them if the owners are people of color. Analyzing the millions of appraisals by using census tracts as a proxy for neighborhoods and comparing communities with nearly identical housing stock, two researchers found that the results showed a clear correlation. The higher the proportion of white residents in each community, the higher the appraised value of individual homes. Now, see, for all you Negroes who said you couldn't support Vice President Kamala Harris because she was too black, she wasn't black enough, or you didn't like her for other reasons, you know she was advocating for this, advocating the ending of the racism, requiring these appraisals to have training. Okay, and then you might say, well, you know, okay, I feel you, I feel you. But you do have to understand, in fact, I pulled it up. This is another New York Times article. Kamala Harris says inequality persists in home appraisals. The vice president announced new plans to prevent racial bias in home appraisals following the evidence of widespread discrimination against black homeowners. See, that Negro Scott Turner and Donald Trump, they don't give a damn about black folks being screwed through home appraisals. They don't care about the billions of dollars that black people lose due to racist home appraisals. No, they want to slap DEI on everything. What I tell y'all when we said voting has consequences. Cameron, I'm going to start with you. Again, this is a perfect example. No surprise they would announce this today. They don't care about black people. They don't care about black wealth. They don't care about ending discrimination. What they want to do is they want to cut off access to equality. They want to cut off access to forcing folk to do what's right. And if it has a positive impact on black folks, the Negroes like Scott Turner and Donald Trump don't give a damn, and they say end it.
So much of black wealth, the number one thing that we own is a home. And this, I remember when this was being enacted and talked about. This was one of the last things I worked on, just in terms of trying to get out the message of when that initial focus around this executive order. But for them to do it on Dr. King's holiday, by design, on a day where Donald Trump and no official accounts from the White House or the president are even acknowledging Dr. King's holiday, it just is a stab in the back. And I think for the people who know there's racism and the racist nature of both the president, his administration, and things they're doing, I think this doesn't come as a surprise. I think for the people who turn their nose or turn a blind eye to it and continue to support the administration, I think this is just another thing they want to sweep under the rug and just not pay attention to. But it does cut at a core issue, because so much of our wealth, like the number one thing any family owns where their wealth is generated, is in their property, is in their homes, and being able to pass that on to the next generation. And so when you're cutting off a few $100,000 homes and you're cutting off tens of thousands of dollars on that appraisal, that significantly not only impacts that family, but it impacts the wealth they're able to pass on to their kids. And it's just another dismantling of the entire ecosystem that supports black folks in America.
This, Avis, is a story here, and it shows the reality. Due to racist home appraisals, it has cost black America $150 billion in equity. This is what this piece right here says. To Cameron's point, home equity represents 65% of all black wealth, according to the nation's oldest minority professional trade association, the National Association of Real Estate Brokers. And their report shows that as a result of the racism, analyzing housing data from 2021 and 2023, its two authors, James H. Carr and his colleague, Michaela Zonta, Both housing, finance, and urban policy experts reached a startling finding. Blacks have lost $150 billion in home equity due to biased home appraisals. Donald Trump and Scott Turner don't give a damn about black folks losing $150 billion.
No, they don't. And I know James Carr very well. Let me just say he's an excellent researcher. And so whatever the numbers that he's coming up with there, I'm telling you, they're 1,000% correct. Okay. He is not flubbing those numbers. Now, listen, here's what I need to tell you about this. This administration, from day one, they have an agenda. We already know about what Project 2025 is in specifics, but let me just say the broader ideology, in my mind, the only logical conclusion is this. They are looking to maximize white political and economic power here, and specifically right wing, because it's not even all white folks, like right wing white political and economic power. They're looking to do everything that they can to disrupt the Latino community and deport as many people as they can. But specifically as it relates to Black people, the main target is our economic power today, our economic power tomorrow. And so this is why they are going after things like this, the equity in our homes. They're going after our jobs. They're going after the ability of our children to get quality education and college education to be able to maximize their future. They're going after all of those things to economically disrupt us. And what you're saying here is exactly right. This is not like something that you can just snap your fingers and correct everything overnight, particularly at the glacial speed that policy typically works in Washington, D.C. And this is why when we come out and vote and the realms of power are turned over to the Democratic Party, they need to act with urgency and they need to prioritize things like this. Black people need to make it known that our priorities are all of those things that have been ripped away during this administration that literally took centuries of blood, sweat, and tears to be able to put into law in the first place. And so I refuse to be one of those who are just satisfied for us being at the bottom of the list of priorities. We need to be at the top of the list of priorities, and the Democratic Party needs to know they need to move swiftly in order to mitigate these damages, because if they do not, these are going to be damages that will be felt literally for generations.
Thing here on Congo is that as a result, again, they control the executive branch. This is what they do. This is one of those issues that any Democrats who's talking about running for office in 2028, you better be talking about this here, because this goes right to the issue of Black wealth creation and sustaining what we already have.
Well, that goes right back to your question to Representative Jeffries, because if we had the opportunity to ask questions, I was going to ask exactly what you said. You talked about this whole idea about people talk about affordability, but there are so many things that are Black issues relating to affordability. And you mentioned issues relating to home ownership. And many of us, when people talk about, affordability, and they're like, we never feel like they're talking to us. And if Democrats don't want to take a powerful study like this and, not listen to Black economists and Black people in political spaces and policy, people who do the polls and the like, to actually hear our pain. And this kind of goes to Avis's point earlier, that people are going to stay home if they feel like people are not going to represent them and fight for them with information and data like this. My philosophy is, even the weaker candidates, we can vote them into office and push them. But a lot of us don't even feel like we should have to do that. And so where's anyone else talking about this, Roland? Where else are people going to be talking about $150 billion being lost from our communities while Trump is out there saying that any Black progress was bad for America? They're getting out there every single day trying to take away the little gains we've been able to get. And so with this information, I'm going to be spreading this as well. If these guys don't get on this and have this message attached to their affordability message, which they say is so key and crucial, I think more of us are going to stay home in the fall. I hope that's not the case, but these guys have a lot of time to get on the good foot and realize what people are talking about. And they have to start. We talk about kids diversifying their network. These politicians, in addition to diversifying their consultants, got to diversify their networks and have the Black Star Network on full rotation regularly.
Folks, we talk about again on this day, and Dr. King, you hear lots of people really focusing on nice and wonderful he is. So we come back from the break. I'm gonna tell you what my man Bawani Jones had to say. So we're gonna talk about that. Gonna go to a break. We come back. Black Star Network headlines with Brittany Noble. I'll be back on the show in a moment.
That evening, I was in Indianapolis, Indiana, campaigning with Robert Kennedy, working toward his nomination, the Democratic nomination for president. And when I heard that Dr. King had been shot, I didn't know his condition. When Robert Kennedy came to speak, he said, we have some sad news tonight, that Martin Luther King Jr. had been assassinated in Memphis, Tennessee. When the audience heard the message, I heard it at the same time, and I cried. When Dr. King was assassinated, I said, well, we still have Bobby. In less than 2.5 months, he was gone. And I think something died in America with the death of Dr. King and Bobby Kennedy.
If in this country right now, you have people get up in the morning and the only thing they can think about is how many people they can hurt, and they got the power, that's the time for mourning.
For better or worse, what makes America special, it's that legal system that's supposed to protect minorities from the tyranny of the majority.
We are at a point of a moral emergency. We must raise a voice of outrage. We must raise a voice of compassion. And we must raise a voice of unity.
We are not in a crisis of party versus party. We are in a crisis of civilization, a human rights crisis, and a crisis of democracy itself. And guess what? You've been chosen to make sure that those that would destroy, those that would hate, don't have the final say, and they don't ultimately win.
Martin Luther King was going across the country to galvanize people, to help them understand the right to vote and registering blacks all across the country. He spent a real significant time in Cleveland. I mean, that was a major driving force between being in our home, and also there were several nightclubs that, you know, became the spot where people would gather. The movers and shakers, the politicians, clergy was so important as well. My father talks about the night that my Uncle Carl was elected to be Cleveland's mayor. And, you know, the streets were going crazy, waiting for the numbers to come in. And there was this excitement in the air. And the numbers are tallied. He wins the election. They were all upstairs in headquarters. Martin Luther King, my dad, my uncle, Otis Moss, so many other notables. And when my Uncle Carl said, well, I need to go down, I need to talk to the people and thank them for what they've done, Martin Luther King told my uncle and my dad, Carl, you go on downstairs. I'm gonna stay up here and stay with Lou. I don't want to take away anything from your moment. So my Uncle Carl went on downstairs, and I said to my father, I said, what did you all talk about? And he said, we just talked about how significant it was that we were being swept up in this moment, that it was a real time of change, and what was being done here in Cleveland what would reverberate across America.
All right, folks, that's more reflection on Dr. King. Time for Black Star Network headlines with Brittany Noble. Here we go.
Roland, an Ohio jury convicted an 83-year-old man of murder in the shooting of an Uber driver whom he wrongly thought was trying to rob him after phone calls deceived them both. In March of 2024, William J. Brock fatally shot 61-year-old Lolitha Toland Hall, thinking she was part of a scheme to obtain $12,000 in a supposed bond money for a relative. Well, the same scammer had also deceived Hall. She drove to Brock's Columbus home to pick up a package for delivery. Brock shot Hall 6 times during her arrival at his home. During the trial, Brock's attorney argued that the shooting was an act of self-defense, claiming that the scammer made threats against Brock and his family. Brock testified that he felt threatened when Hall arrived at his house. Brock was convicted of murder, felonious assaults, and kidnapping. Now he's scheduled to be sentenced later this week. New Jersey's Attorney General is suing a suburban police department for systematically targeting Black and non-white drivers. Data from the Clark Township shows that between 2015 and 2020, Black drivers were pulled over nearly 4 times more often than white drivers, despite making up a small portion of the population. The lawsuit also cites a whistleblower's recordings alleging that town officials used racial slurs and discussed policing strategies meant to keep Black people out of the community. The U.S. Department of Education delays a plan to garnish wages of those with defaulted student loans. The agency says this move is only temporary. Secretary of Education Nicholas Kent says the temporary pause will help the Trump administration make improvements to the broken student loan system so that it functions more efficiently and fairly. However, delinquent student loan borrowers could see wage garnishments next month. The Committee for Responsible Federal Budget accuses Trump of receiving and extending pandemic-era student loan pauses that it had vowed to end. Around 5 million borrowers have defaulted on student loan payments, which means they haven't paid their debts in about 9 months. Immigration and Customs Enforcement says a man has died while in federal custody. ICE identified the detainee as Victor Diaz, a 36-year-old undocumented immigrant from Nicaragua who died on January 14th at a detention facility in El Paso. Contract security staff say they found him unconscious and unresponsive in his room. An immigration judge ordered his removal last August, and ICE processed a final order of removal just 2 days before his death. The agency says he died of a presumed suicide, though the official cause of death remains under investigation. This marks the 5th death of an undocumented migrant in ICE custody in the first 3 weeks of 2026. Trailblazing mathematician Dr. Gladys West, whose groundbreaking work helped make the modern GPS possible, has died at 95. Raised in segregated rural Virginia, West rose to become a key scientist at the Naval Surface Warfare Center, which is where her precise calculations help build the GPS systems that we use every day. While her contributions went unrecognized for decades, she is now celebrated as a hidden figure whose work transformed global travel, emergency response, and everyday technology. Dr. Gladys West leaves behind a legacy of brilliance, perseverance, and world-changing impact. Roland?
Thanks a bunch. Folks, I saw a lot of different commentary today around Dr. King, and I really love what Bomani Jones had to say on his digital show. Check this out.
I believe that Martin Luther King is the finest man that this country has produced, a man good in such a way that I don't think that this country deserved him in a number of ways. And the biggest thing that I say about King that I think is very important and speaks to, what he is or was, is that no one has ever spoken with greater moral clarity. And my greatest frustration with people who misappropriate his words, or, as this day goes on and people go and find the most benign quotes of his that they possibly can to put him out there, don't worry, be happy, Martin Luther King, right? That kind of stuff. You have to do it on purpose. It's the only way. You can't accidentally get it wrong. It's not possible, what was right and what was not. It wasn't just like expressed in slogan. It was always broken down. Because the thing about King that we also don't talk nearly enough about is he's really, really, really smart, right? Like the logic on his stuff. Like if you were doing it with arrows, like A implies B, B implies C, all that stuff. The lines are always so clear. There's so little noise that surrounds it at every turn. right? Like it's so clear. It's always there. It's so resonant. And it makes you stop and realize, and this is part of why King was so effective. Like, do you realize how like bad of a person you had to be to disagree with the things that he was talking about? Like how fundamentally rotten that you had to be? That's the only reason that like this holiday ever got passed or anything else, is that it's like ain't no leak in that ship, man. It's not there. It's not. And so, with that in mind, I encourage you to go find anything that King has written. Chaos Our Community is the one that I typically recommend that people go to. And understand, man, he at every turn was confronting the problem of race and how we got there squarely, right? There were no punches pulled. There were no dirty punches either, but there were no punches pulled. He was always so straight ahead at this. And the greatness of King, to me, was another thing that was a settled matter. But we know that it is not. And we're going to have Howard Bryan on tomorrow to talk about his book that he wrote about Jackie Robinson and Paul Robeson. And they made Paul Robeson disappear. Like full on disappear. Like he never happened. Like it didn't, like perhaps the most famous black man in the world in the 1940s. By the time he was dead in the 1970s, it's like he was never there. Like the memories of these people can be made to evaporate very quickly without a conscientious effort to keep them alive. Now, something that I think is important when I make that point is this. And this is for everybody, though it has a particular, I think it has a special, somewhat special, particular meaning for black people. They can change what they teach in schools. They can change the points that they use to decide is like some larger form of education. They cannot change what we teach each other. They cannot change what we preach on our own time. They can't do it. Everything I ever learned about black people, I learned for black people. It was never with any sort of expectation that I was going to learn this in school. It just wasn't it, right? And we have to keep that in mind more and more. And remember that at some point, it looks as though it is possible that we are going to have to teach each other again about Martin Luther King. And if we have to teach each other about Martin Luther King, I think it becomes imperative for a lot of us that we actually learn about Martin Luther King, because a lot of us depended on other people to give us that information. Nah, man, information's out there. Go out there, get it. Be inspired, be blown away by what you read. But don't be sitting around waiting. We got to do what we got to do is what I'm saying. Let's make sure we do it.
The reason I wanted to play that is because Bomani is absolutely right. What I have consistently said, I said it in my speech to Columbus, Ohio, at the Columbus Education Association on Thursday. I said it at the City of Dallas's MLK program on Saturday, is that my big problem that I have is that consistently when we have MLK events around his birthday, events during Black History Month, events centered around the commemoration when he was assassinated, that what we have done, white America, but even Black America, what we have done, we have allowed the gentrification of Dr. King. We have allowed the sanitized version of King to become dominant. We have stripped Dr. King of his radicalness. We've stripped him as a revolutionary. We've stripped him down to just being, this nice, wonderful, cuddly teddy bear who just wanted all of us to just get along. The NFL announced that they're going to put in the end zones of the AFC and NFC championship game in the Super Bowl to commemorate Dr. King. They're going to choose love in one end zone, and it takes all of us in the other. We talk about I Have a Dream. I saw this post from former Commanders quarterback, of course, played at Baylor, won the Heisman Trophy, RG3. Oh, yeah, I saw his post, and he posted a photo of him and his mixed race family. And this is what he posted. Give me 1 second. I want y'all to see this here. So he posted this tweet. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will be not judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. Happy MLK Day. And so he has this photo here of him, his daughters, and his white wife. That's fine. But RG3, you do know that it was a whole lot more said earlier in that speech. You do know in that same speech that was a radical economic speech. You do know in that same speech he called out police brutality. In that same speech, he said America gave black folks a check stamped insufficient funds. King had a whole lot to say. But see, when you only reduce King to the content of character and ignore the rest, then you are ignoring radical King. Nicole Hannah-Jones posted on her social media when there was a group in Chicago that wanted to cancel her speech. So she completely redid her speech, and she made her entire speech quotes from King. Y'all, if we actually played on this show some stuff that Dr. King said and wrote, man, it would make a whole lot of white folk, but also black folk, real uncomfortable. Because as Bonnie said, King cut to the chase on a whole lot of stuff. And he made a whole lot of black folk uncomfortable, such as this.
I'm tired of marching. Tired of marching for something that should have been mine at birth. I don't mind saying to you tonight. I don't mind saying to you tonight that I'm tired of the tension surrounding our day. I don't mind saying to you tonight that I'm tired of living every day under the threat of death. I have no martyr complex. I want to live as long as anybody in this building tonight. And sometimes I begin to doubt whether I'm going to make it through. I must confess I'm tired. Well, I don't know what will happen now.
Now, see, they don't play that, but let me do this here. I'm going to keep playing this mountaintop part because I need y'all to understand what we do even with this here. Listen.
But it really doesn't matter with me now because I've been to the mountaintop. I don't mind. Like anybody, I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place. But I'm not concerned about that now. I just want to do God's will. And He's allowed me to go up to the mountain. And I've looked over and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land. So I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord.
See, we love to play that part of his speech. That's the bottom 2 minutes. But how many times have you heard people play the other 41 minutes? How many times have you heard him talk about we're going to have economic withdrawal? How many times have you heard folk play that part of King. Dr. King was a radical. 1959, A. Philip Randolph, president of the NAACP, actually called MLK a radical. King scared America. Do you understand that 33% of America approved the King in his last year? See, this is what folk don't want to confront. They don't want to confront that King. Because, see, when that King speaks about being a militant, oh my God, they get scared because, see, you can't be a black militant. If you're a white militant, they call you a patriot. They call you a founding father. Not when you're a black militant. This is King speaking on that very issue of militancy.
Well, I hope I'm militant. I think it is possible to be militantly nonviolent. Nonviolence can often be misunderstood, and I think this is what happens when one uses the phrase passive resistance, which is a good one, but it can be a misnomer at some points because it gives the impression that one is passive and doing nothing, wherein this is a very active method, a very powerful one, and it does resist. What we insist in the nonviolent movement is that in resisting the unjust system, and this should be done with all of one's might, but not with violence, and it should not be done with hatred.
He's talking about militant, but that is not the King they want us to know. Because, again, the further you get away from King, then what you do is you get away from his death. That means that you are stripping him of what made him him, stripping him of him calling out America, challenging America in every facet. I'm going to play one more before I go to my panel. Listen.
Be honest enough to tell you that I'm worried about America. Yeah. I'm worried about our nation because it's sick with racism still. Just think about the fact that we live in a nation which was founded on the principle that all men are created equal. And yet men are still arguing over whether the color of a man's skin determines the content of his character. And I believe that the Lord told me to say to the United States of America that is sick with militarism and is sick with excessive materialism. Have you ever thought about it? There are between 38 and 50 million people in the United States of America who are poverty-stricken, making income less than the poverty level. And yet, this is the richest nation in the history of the world. Our national gross product this year will go beyond $800 billion. And yet there are between 38 and 50 million people who are poverty-stricken. Now, there's something wrong. A lot of people are afraid to say it. But I don't mind saying it. You see, somebody said to me the other night, don't you think, Dr. King, you are going to have to start speaking more in terms of the administration's policy? Because since you started talking against the war in Vietnam, it's hurt the budget of your organization, and people who once respected you don't respect you anymore. And I had to look over and say, sir, I'm sorry, but you don't know me. I'm not a consensus leader. I don't determine what is right and wrong by looking at the budget of my organization, and I don't determine what is right and wrong by taking a Gallup poll of the majority opinion. And so because there's something wrong, our struggle must continue. And what we must see is that our nation's summers of riots are caused by our nation's winters of delay.
I'm going to start with you, M.A. Congo. That's the King. that Bermani is talking about, that we have to be teaching our children, our nieces, our nephews, our fellow brothers and sisters, and we've got to stop asking them to do it because they are never going to teach that king.
That's right. That's right. I mean, and for me, going like what Bomani said, I had to learn from my own community because even growing up, they not only taught us the pacifist side of Dr. King, that was all he was, but then they said, and then there was this other guy, this violent guy, Malcolm X, and don't be like that. And so when we take the real Dr. King and you realize that their messages were the same, Andy Young talks about, they were friends, and all of those stories we don't know. That energy that I just got, if more people saw that image of Dr. King, those videos, and the fact that, in color to connect it more, with society today, because we think it's ancient and black and white times and all of that, that is what's so important. And lastly, I will say, when he said that point about y'all must not know me, I don't go to polls or whatever to get my opinion, Democrats need to also see that story as well, because like Jennifer Welch said, they crowdsource their morality. They take polls and talk to these consultants before talking about what's right. Dr. King said the time is always right to do right. I love talking to my kids about Dr. King and what he represented and what Coretta Scott King represented. And when we teach them, they easily turn on the TV and see that they're being lied to about this man. And it leads them to question, what else have they been lied to about as it relates to our history? That's why we got to go with what Bomani said and take the weight and teach it the right way ourselves and teach about him ourselves the right way.
Avis, his book, Why We Can't Wait. I have it right here. Also, first of all, King only wrote 3 books. People don't understand it. He only wrote 3 books. This is one of those 3, Chaos or Community, which Babani talked about. I've talked about that book for years, and I guarantee you I sold more copies of that book than the King kids. I have mentioned that book in I have mentioned that book in speeches for 20 plus years. And the thing is, in here, MLK is challenging at their core white preachers for their silence. He's challenging the folks saying, how can you be about Jesus, but then you are silent on the treatment of black people? Again, this is radical King. Now, the words may be, again, somebody might sit here and say, well, the words are flowery and they're poetic. But no, he was calling white folks out at their core in this book.
He certainly was, and specifically white, quote unquote, progressives. Here is the thing that we have to realize, that this is someone who was a radical truth teller. He was someone of extraordinary levels of courage and bravery. He is someone who could not be bought. He is someone who could not be intimidated. Don't think that our own FBI didn't try every which way.
Everything.
To undermine him, right? However, he had a strong sense of justice, righteousness, and an understanding that he was meant. I just have to believe he knew in his heart he was meant to be the leader of that time. And when I think of his work, I think of the timelessness of it. So, I have an email that I send out to my folk on a regular basis. And today, when I wrote about King, I included a quote of his that I feel like is especially relevant for this moment. And that quote is, "We must see now that the evils of racism, economic exploitation, and militarism are all tied together. And you cannot get rid of one without getting rid of the other." That's from Where Do We Go From Here, 1967. That could have been said yesterday.
Indeed.
This is timeless wisdom, timeless courage, timeless leadership, and it's our responsibility to continue that legacy through the acts that we do each and every day.
Indeed. I love this one here because for folk who somehow think that black is beautiful, was only James Brown, was only Stokely Carmichael, was only the Black Panthers, was only Aretha Franklin and others. No, again, this is the king. You ain't gonna hear MSNBC, CNN, Fox News, ABC, NBC, CBS, News Nation, or any of these folk, Newsmax, OWN, One American News. They ain't gonna play this.
We don't have anything to be ashamed of. Somebody told a lie one day. They couched it in language. They made everything black, ugly, and evil. Look in your dictionary and see the synonyms of the word black. It's always something degrading and low and sinister. Look at the word white. It's always something pure, high, and clean. But I want to get the language right tonight. I want to get the language so right that everybody here will cry out, yes, I'm black, I'm proud of it, I'm black and beautiful.
Cameron, that ain't AI. Let me, before I go to you, I do want to read this. This is from Why We Can't Wait. King writes, but though I was initially disappointed at being categorized as an extremist, as I continued to think about the matter, I gradually gained a measure of satisfaction from the label. Was not Jesus an extremist for love? Love your enemies, bless them that curse you, do good to them that hate you, and pray for them which despitefully use you and persecute you? Was not Amos an extremist for justice? Let justice roll down like waters and righteousness like an ever-flowing stream. Was not Paul an extremist for the Christian gospel? I bear in my body the marks of the Lord Jesus. Was not Martin Luther an extremist? Here I stand, I cannot do otherwise, so help me God. And John Bunyan, I will stay in jail to the end of my days before I make a butchery of my conscience. And Abraham Lincoln, this nation cannot survive half slave and half free. And Thomas Jefferson, we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. So the question is not whether we will be extremists, but what kind of extremists we will be. Will we be extremists for hate or for love? Will we be extremists for the preservation of injustice or for the extension of justice? In that dramatic scene on Calvary's Hill, 3 men were crucified. We must never forget that all 3 were crucified for the same crime, the crime of extremism. 2 were extremists for immorality and thus fell below their environment. The other, Jesus Christ, was an extremist for love, truth, and goodness, and thereby rose above his environment. Perhaps the South, the nation, and the world are in dire need of creative extremists.
I wish we had a few more extremists who took on some of those, like I said, extremists for love, extremists for justice. As we were thinking about quotes, and especially in this, and we had so many different politicians on who like to pull like some of the highlights and quotes from Dr. King. But there's something Dr. King was working on, the Poor People's Campaign, and he was organizing around trying to end poverty, as you mentioned, as you showed in some of your quotes there. And I think one that really strikes me, in that when I think about how we win back the House, or how politicians really need to focus on, is on poverty. Where do we go from here? He said, I am now convinced that the simplest approach will prove to be the most effective. The solution to poverty is to abolish it directly by a now widely discussed measure, the guaranteed income. And when I think about some of the biggest political movements, definitely on the progressive side or on the Democratic side, the Bernie Sanders of the world, getting universal basic income, something to end poverty, because everything is showing us prices are going up. We're more and more people, black folks, everybody is being united by something that things are costing too much, affordability. However you package that, and the fact that that was something that was so poignant and so focused of King, even right up until his death, is something that I think we need to draw back on and really understand how he was able to speak about that and how he was able to focus on that. If we really think we're going to take back and kind of lift not just black folks up, but lift all of us up.
Well, do understand, folks, one of the reasons why we did this show today the way we did it is because we know you are not going to get this much blackness, even on this day, on all those other networks combined. Matter of fact, I used to hate going on CNN on this day. Roland, do you believe that if Dr. King was here, that he would not be happy that his dream is not being fulfilled? They were all fixated on that question. I couldn't stand that. It was just dumb to me. In fact, there was one network that reached out to me that wanted me to come on to talk about the story that Cameron mentioned, young folks as they get further away from the civil rights movement. I was like, really? Out of all the black stuff that's happening today, y'all want to talk about that? But they canceled me because they got an interview with the coach of the Indiana football team because the national championship is being played tonight. So that tells you right there what priorities are. But this 2-hour show here is a perfect example of why black-owned media matters. We don't take King Day off for this very reason. Because we know these other networks, they're not going to play, they were not going to stream the MLK Memorial Wreath-laying ceremony. We did. They weren't going to stream all of the Ebenezer Baptist Church event. We did. They were not going to pull the interviews that we have of these civil rights luminaries that we actually have in our archives. In fact, right after this show, y'all got to stick around because we're going to be running a lot of these interviews. And after this show, the first one up is Zernona Clayton, secretary for the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. When she joined SCLC, she traveled the nation with Coretta Scott King as her aide. When Dr. King was assassinated, it was Zernona Clayton who was in the bedroom with her as she took calls and visits from world leaders. She talks about the last phone call, last conversation with Dr. King, driving him to the airport when he went to Memphis. She talks about the aftermath. Wait till you hear her talking about climbing into the casket to reapply his makeup because the funeral home did an awful job. But she talks about this important history. And see, this is why we did this. You gotta understand something. December 2017, TV One canceled News One Now. We had gone to Atlanta and we did interviews with C.T. Vivian. And then what we did was the show got canceled and I was sending them emails saying, hey, King's commemoration of the assassination is coming up. This was April 4th, 2018. And I kept saying, what are we doing? What are we doing? I wasn't hearing back. I sent emails in February. What are we doing? So finally, I decided to take it upon myself and spend $30,000 of my own money. And we went to Atlanta and interviewed Juanita Abernathy. I gave a speech in Buffalo, New York, and we traveled to Ithaca, New York, where there was a nursing home for retired Cornell University staffers. And we interviewed Dorothy Cotton. We hopped on a plane and went to San Francisco and went to Stanford, interviewed Clarence Jones, Dr. King's attorney, who helped him write the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom speech, the I Have a Dream speech. In fact, I talked to Clarence today. He turned 95 years old a week ago. We talked to Claiborne Carson, who led Lisa King Center at Stanford University. We went to Memphis and talked to Bill Lucy. Lucy died last year, labor leader. We went to Los Angeles and talked to Dr. Lawson, an amazing figure. We did that. We did it because the voices needed to be recorded. Talked to Lori Stokes when the book came out. Her father was Carl Stokes, Reverend Jackson, Andrew Young, John Lewis, Eleanor Holmes Norton. We did that because we needed their voices. To listen to Reverend Jackson talk, he doesn't sound that way today. Dorothy Cotton, we interviewed her in February. The last words I said to Dorothy, I'll see you in Memphis. She says, Roland, I'll see you in Memphis. She never made it to Memphis. She was too ill. She died in May. Y'all, this is why black-owned media matters. Our ability to record these stories and to share them and to have them and to be able to preserve them and then be able to replay them year after year and make them available, that's why it matters. I don't care. See, people have asked me, man, if MSNBC and CNN, one of these networks, that came and offered you a show, I'm like, no, because if I can't own it and control it, I don't want to do it. It doesn't matter if they want to pay me $2, $3, $4, $5 million. Because see, if you own and control the product, then you are able to share it with the public. So you need to understand that we don't just do these shows the way we are just because. So when I'm talking about why it's important to help us fund this, we don't have millionaires and billionaires. We don't have these ad agencies dropping millions of dollars on us to do what we do. And I have said for a long time, Black America will rule the day. And we don't have Black-owned media. I was told the other day, Essence laid off 28 people last week. 28 last week. I've said it, Ebony, pretty much an Instagram page. They hired Cora Murray to try to generate more content, but y'all need to understand something. We are in trouble if we do not have Black-owned media that centers Black America. White mainstream media, they'll talk about Dr. King today only because it's the holiday. And they'll give it a little time. People are hitting me up, say, what are your Black History Month plans? I said, we have none. Because we do Black history every day. What are your plans for Black Music Month? None, because we do Black music every day. This is about centering us. More importantly, not asking for permission. Let me thank Ome Congo, Avis, Cameron for being on today's show. I appreciate it. Folks, be sure to share this show. Share what you heard from here. And when I ask you to join our Bring the Funk fan club, it's more than 2,000 or 3,000 of you watching right now on YouTube and the app. And if you have not contributed to our show, you should. Because I'm telling y'all right now, the stories don't get told. Those civil rights voices, they're passing away. I said that Clarence Jones is 95. Andrew Young is 94. Interviews that we have, Harry Belafonte, we interviewed him, ancestor. Juanita Abernathy, ancestor. John Lewis, ancestor. Dorothy Cotton, ancestor. And several others. Bill Lucy, ancestor. This is about preserving our history, next generation, be aware of that history. If you want to support us, please do so. There were some people who gave today, and I appreciate it. There were some folks, I saw the emails come across. There were some folks who gave us $1,000. There were people who gave us, give me 1 second, put it up, who gave us 50 and 20, and I was just appreciative of all of that. Folks who were supporting us. Lori Green, I appreciate your donation. Let's see here. Daniel Wright, I appreciate your donation. Let's see here. There was some, let's see here. Christian Pearson as well. So many different people were contributing today, renewing their invoices. We sent invoices, reminders out. And so, folks, I tell you, if 20,000 of our fans, viewers, whatever, contribute to our show, a minimum of $50 each a year, it raises $1 million. It offsets the $195,000 a month it costs for this show, this studio, this network. This Saturday, we're shooting 2 episodes of our upcoming health show, Second Opinion with Dr. Ebony Hilton. January 26th, y'all, next Monday, we debut our daily noon news show with Brittany Noble. These things don't happen without resources. Your contributions are critically important. So please, we want you to support us. If you want to give to us via Cash App, use the Stripe QR code. You see it right here on the screen. That's for also credit cards as well. Checks and money order. You can make it payable to, we take those. Hey, it's cumbersome to go through all of that, but guess what? The money still deposits. Checks in money order, make it payable to Roland Martin Unfiltered, P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 2003 7-0196. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered, Venmo RM Unfiltered, Zelle Roland at RolandSMartin.com, Roland at RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Download the Black Star Network app, available on Apple phone, Android phone, Apple TV, Android TV, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, Samsung Smart TV. You can also, of course, if you want to get our Roland Martin Unfiltered Black Star Network swag, go to shopblackstarnetwork.com. Shopblackstarnetwork.com. And so you can get our t-shirts, our hoodies, and all that good stuff. And of course, we support black-owned companies. And as you see, all of these products that you see right here are available at shopblackstarnetwork.com. All of these products right here at shopblackstarnetwork.com. So you see these dolls, you see these STEM dolls, you see chips, we got salsas, we got all kind of different stuff, car wash stuff, we got candles, we've got black-owned toilet paper, we got HBCU shirts, we've got watches, we've got, of course, skincare stuff. All of that stuff is available at shopblackstarnetwork.com, shopblackstarnetwork.com. And don't forget, you also have download the app Fanbase. And guess what? We're almost there. Raised $17 million, less than $100,000 left. If you want to invest, go to startengine.com/fanbase. All right, folks, when I was looking for an MLK shirt, I realized I didn't really have a lot, but this was when I gave the keynote address in San Antonio. Y'all realize San Antonio has the largest annual MLK parade that takes place? That's right. So I spoke when they had their 50th anniversary, and so I just want to go ahead and rock this. And so the folks in San Antonio, keep up having your MLK Day Parade. Folks, that's it. Again, coming up, an amazing conversation with Zanona Clayton, who worked with Dr. King and Coretta Scott King, and then over the next several hours, many more of our civil rights luminaries who knew and worked with Dr. King. Be sure to check that out, people. Share it, pass it on, so folks can get educated. Trust me, you're not going to find this content on any other black-owned platform. You're not going to see it on any other mainstream white platform. You're not going to see it anywhere. This is why Black Star Network matters. I'll see y'all tomorrow. Holla! How to spend some money.